What's going on, guys? Today we are back with another history video. Today's subject, World War One. This is for all the people in Mr. Carey's class. This is your midterm review. Picture this, a Europe, hundreds of years ago. Not too distant, really, in historical standards. This Europe was plagued by many more problems. Europe was a lot less free. People were not liberated or anything. There were the places that are now known as Italy and Germany were divided and a mess. Italy, with its new rise of nationalism, began the Risorgimento, or the unification in English. They began spreading the mozzarella sauce all across the peninsula. And the Germans saw it and said, hey, I want to get united. Let's go. And then they started doing it. They united and spread their love and culture throughout the rest of the land. Except when they did it, it wasn't peaceful. Otto von Bismarck led a campaign all throughout Germany, which we will not get too much into because it requires its own video for itself. Maybe in the future. Anyways, on with that. Inevitably, skipping over most of the unification, they inevitably do unify. These new aligned countries, feeling that they're in a similar state, decide to form an alliance. The Triple Alliance. Also, meanwhile, in the western parts of Europe, France and England and Russia feel they have a sort of good relation with each other in the way they are. France had just been defeated in the Franco-Prussian War by Germany, which meant that now England and France, traditionally rivals, could now sort of make an agreement, along with Russia, who they had also just defeated in a war. Feeling that they would be sandwiched in between the Triple Alliance, they began the Triple Entente. Hi, Vsauce here. And the next subject we're going to be talking about is going to be imperialism, which is a great segue because the things we just talked about was alliances. Now, those alliances of the countries there had also spread their wings inside of Africa. And the new countries of Germany and Italy were like, yo, Africa, that's lit, okay? I want to get in on that. And they're like, okay, let's do it, bro. And they just slammed. They slammed into Africa. Italy began purchasing places in Israel and just destroying the native populations as you do in traditional European fashion. Germans actually somehow managed to contest the other colonial powers like France and England and made them go, Germany, what the heck? That is my Africa. Stay back. Go to your little German Africa, which is not a very good sight in my opinion. I just don't like the picture of a bunch of Africans in a bar speaking Deutsches. Also, in a much weaker country, Austria, Hungary. Gotta remember it's Hungary, totally not just Austria. Began also imperialism, but Austria is much more weak and can't bother to go into Africa. So instead, they go into the Balkans and conquer Bosnia and begin harassing Serbia. This is going to be very important later. You'll eventually see how they all sort of intertwine. As the Austrians spread their schnitzel all over Bosnia, some people are just like, hey, yo, fake Germans, I don't really want to be that, okay? You can, like, take your little schnitzel and, like, push it out. Like, take it and push it over there. Because we don't want any of that. We want to be Bosnian. We want to be Muslim. Oh, oh. Hello again. Next subject is nationalism. Nationalism heavily intertwines with imperialism, as when a country is taken over, naturally, they usually don't want to be with that country. So, the best example of this, other than Bosnia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, would be the country of France and Germany, two countries. Alsace-Lorraine. Alsace-Lorraine was both French and German. Baguette, beer. And with that, they were very contested. But currently, at this point in time, they were under German control, which a lot of them did not agree with. These Alsace-Lorrainians wanted to be French, which would mean that if they were to be in a war, that'd be bad, but it wouldn't really matter that much because they would want to be with them. And also with Austria and Bosnia, Bosnia did not want to be with Austria. Serbia didn't want to be Austria's little puppet who can be thrown around. They didn't like that. They didn't like having to all work in factories and to death. And so they all sort of had little up-ins with the governments and began to despise their countries and wanted their countries to be free. Now this is the juicy stuff. Militarization. Now these countries with all of this together were very on edge all of the time. Even though they didn't just sort of go to war out of curiosity, they still were all ready to do it. And that was because all of the alliances and imperialism and nationalism everywhere, they had to have strong militaries and had to be ready for whatever would happen. And that meant they had to keep industrializing and cranking out all that stuff. Cranking the guns, cranking the artillery, cranking the tanks, cranking the planes. Until it all went into one cathartic moment. In June, the Archduke of Austria began a little tour throughout the newly annexed territories, or at least newly completely annexed territories. As you see, the current emperor didn't really have any legitimate sons, so they got the old Archduke, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife to get a sort of tour to make sure the people loved him. And so they did it. In June of 1914, they were going down an alleyway until an organization known as the Black Hand from Serbia, a Serbian terrorist group, decided to destroy! And they failed. They threw bombs at him a ton of times, and they just kept going around. And they just, sadly, decided they weren't going to stop doing the tour because they were going to die if they continued doing it. Instead, they just made a different turn and went on. And that would be the worst decision of just their entire lives. On June 1914, a Serbian nationalist jumped in front of the Archduke and his wife and shot them to death. A month after hearing this, the Austrian government was infuriated with this and decided to blame it on Serbia and went to them. Even though Serbia had no connections to the Black Hand, they blamed them for it. And so they sent them a list of impossible demands that pretty much just went completely against their sovereignty. And once they inevitably declined it, World War I began on July 27th, 1914. Austria declared war on Serbia. Now this is where all the alliance stuff comes in. As Serbia, now keep with me. Please keep with me. Serbia was aligned with Russia. So when Austria was declaring war on them, they said, hey, yo, Russia, we're Slavs. Let's beat the Schnitzelmens. And then when they found out that big old Russia was going to fight them, they said, hey, Germany, we got an alliance. Let's just go. And then when Germany found out, then when France found out that all this was going down and they had an alliance with Russia, they said, Germany, no, you can't do that. And they just okay, we got to fight you. And then when France was fighting Germany, they had an alliance with England, which put them into the war. And was why all of this just went crashing down so quickly. Now, to summarize the war in 1914, it was a complete mess. Okay, what was happening was they hadn't really completely mobilized and couldn't. They were like, whoa, okay, guys, I think we just need a quick truce on Christmas, and then we can all get back to killing each other. And that was pretty much the war then. Now, the US had mostly remained neutral during 1914 and 15, but the neutrality was pretty much broken nearly instantly. In 1915, the Lusitania, a transportation ship, was sailing across in the Irish coast. While there, a German U-boat spotted it. They mistaked it for a warship and attacked it. Not everybody could get out in time, and when the torpedo hit, it sunk the Lusitania, killing thousands of Americans. This helped to sort of sway it from mostly neutral to more of the Entente side. This also sparked Woodrow Wilson and the banks to start sending tons of money to England to fund weapons, almost dooming America to fight for the Allies. Another thing of note that happened during this time was Italy. Italy, beforehand, was actually in the Triple Alliance. But they weren't too satisfied for what Germany was doing in Belgium. Also, they really wanted this territory in Austria, known as South Tyrol, and another territory known as Israel, and some German African territories, and more of the Ottoman Empire that they hadn't taken. They signed a secret treaty with France and signed the Treaty of London, which effectively made them switch sides. When they switched sides in 1915, Italy declared war on Austria and Germany and began fighting. In 1916, even less was really happening. The war was going on as usual in Europe, but America was now sending some troops over to help in France. Along with this, more ships began getting sunk, which even more helped sway the opinion of the Americans. Americans would go on to have a secret, well, not secret, pretty open hatred of the German people. Things were changed, the names of places were changed, sauerkraut was changed to Liberty cabbage, hamburgers were changed to Liberty steaks. German was taken completely out of schools, and in one case, a German was lynched. Also at this time, Germany had their last straw with America. They sent a telegram to Mexico urging them to invade the United States and return for their old cession territories back. Britain intercepted this and gave it to America. This infuriated Woodrow Wilson, who promptly afterwards asked for a declaration of war from Congress. And in April of 1917, America had gone from a neutral nation to a nation at war with Germany. Russia also was basically done in this war. They had been suffering so much at this point. And right before America could really enter the war, they signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. The treaty up on the screen. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. But yes, this probably ended the war after they had overthrown the Tsar. With the defeat, they also had another revolution in which Vladimir Lenin, the Bolshevik leader, overtook Russia and started what would be known as the Soviet Union. At the end of 1917, the war was getting to its height. Trench warfare had been a brutal system, with almost no territory being able to be taken. Each day, soldiers would have to sit in rat-infested trenches like animals, only getting out to either eat or to kill people in advance. They only ever advanced like a mile at best. And oftentimes, because of the huge industrialization, they'd just be killing each other before they could even fight with artillery. But in 1918, the war was fighting at its peak. American troops were now in France and were fighting in the Western Front. The troops began hammering these Germans back, who realized the only way they could truly win this war would be to spearhead their way to France. They slammed through each defense they had, but with each attack they became weaker and weaker. By the final attack, they were even pushed back. This was the end. Germany had spent every single thing on this war. They were torn, their empire collapsing. Promptly they were pushed out of France and then Alsace-Lorraine with almost no resistance from the population there, as said before. And on November 11th, at the 11th hour, in 1918, Germany surrendered. And then after this horrible, great war ended, the world lived in complete peace with never, ever a bigger war to come that was ever bigger than this one, that overshadowed it completely. No, they lived in complete peace, and humanity lived happily ever after. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to slam that subscribe button. Hulk smash that like button. And also, I'd like to give some props to Richik over here playing the guitar. And yes, stay tuned. More videos planned.